So you're back after lunch and you continued about what time?
It was early afternoon, 1:30-ish, 2-ish maybe, we got back.
Okay, then what time, and y'all went back to the same location?
We went back to the same location in the hotel, sat back down in the corner and started back in our last meeting.
And how long did that session last?
When you're talking about putting me in a seated position for a period of time, it seemed like it lasted for hours. I mean, I'm just on the go. So I mean, it seemed like it lasted forever. I remember breaking later on in the afternoon when we decided that we were going to go back and shower up.
About how long, even excluding lunch, about how long do you think y'all met and discussed budget issues?
From the beginning when I got there,
Right.
let's just conservatively say 9 o'clock in the morning. So from 9 to maybe noon minus lunch. And then that afternoon without lunch, 7 hours maybe.
Right. And you discussed it during lunch,
Yes, sir.
and that was about how long?
45 minutes to an hour and 15 probably.
So you're dealing close to how many hours now?
I mean, that would have been probably 8 hours. Again, conservative.
And so you broke up late afternoon. What was the understanding or agreement, however y'all decided to do it?
We were going to go back to the rooms, shower up, get ready, and go to dinner. I don't remember what time we agreed to meet. It was early evening.
And what did you do? Where'd y'all go then?
We came back downstairs. We all gathered together. I don't specifically remember us determining where we were going to go. I think we just kind of walked until we found a nice place to stop and get something to eat. I remember it had an Italian kind of feel, the place that we stopped. And we went in. I think we went upstairs to eat dinner.
And did y'all discuss any business at dinner?
The budget meeting continued from the time that we got back in the lobby again. We just started talking about it while we were walking. We were talking. When we got to where we were going, we were talking about it. Intermittent conversations about where we're going to stop and eat. And then we continued into the conversation throughout dinner.
Did anybody ever make a comment about the budget?
Joe finally said at one point later in the evening, I mean, it was well past dark. Joe finally said, enough. I'm done talking about the budget. That's enough for today. We're finished. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
And was that during the meal?
That was during the meal.
Okay. So where after that?
We left there and went to, I believe we went to the epicenter. The epicenter in Charlotte.
Okay. And y'all had drinks there?
We did. I broke off from the group for a minute and went to the CVS.
What did you go to CVS for?
Same thing I go to a CVS for every time I'm out of town in a hotel, and that is Advil.
Okay. And how long were you away from the group?
Not very long.
Did you know where they were going?
I had no idea.
Did you ultimately receive a text message from Savannah?
I did.
And what was do you remember the location?
She told me where they were. It was like the tin roof or music, something, tin roof maybe.
Mm-hmm. And did you respond back to that text message?
I did when I got there. I said, here, it's not a small place. So.
And when you walked in, did you see them?
I did.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I did.
So, leave there, and was that, do you recall any guys kind of being flirty with Savannah at one of the places, or was that the place or not?
I do not recall anybody being flirty with Savannah anytime we were up there.
Okay.
But I recall the conversation. I had left to go to the restroom, And when I came back from the restroom, Joe, said something about some guys were hitting on Savannah. And then Joe proceeded to tell one of the guys at their party to, hey, watch out, that's the sheriff of Granville County, y'all better be careful, kind of conversation. But I didn't see the guys.
Okay. So you'll leave that?
Yes, sir.
Where was the last place y'all went?
I don't remember.
All of you still in the group, well, or did John leave?
I did not realize that John had left until we started walking back.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started walking back, I realized we were -1.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, where's John? And Joe or someone told me that he had went in and gone back to the room.
Okay. So who all, position-wise, you remember how people were walking back?
We were all grouped up together. I mean, it was the 5 of us, and we were walking within, feet, number of feet from each other, maybe 3 or 4 feet. I mean, it was just like a group of people walking down the street with their friends.
Did you ever pull a tube of lube out?
No.
If you'd done such an act, would other people in a position to see it?
Yes.
Right. So y'all eventually go back to the hotel?
Yes.
Right. Then what happened?
We went back to the hotel, and I went to my room.
Did you ever go to Savannah's room?
No.
Did you ever call on your phone?
No.
There's a text message in there at 3:55 a.m. that says, quote, "me." Do you remember that?
No.
Right. Would there have been any reason for you to be texting her if you were in the room?
No.
Okay. So the next morning, what happened?
Was that the final day that we were there?
Right.
The next morning we get up and we packed. If I recall correctly, we checked our bags with the I think it's called bellhop up front as we were going to check out. We went. We being myself, Marcus, and Savannah went to a little small diner. It was like a Dickies kind of diner that was within walking distance. We had breakfast. We sat in a little corner booth, and then we left and came back.
Did y'all have a discussion about how the meeting went?
We did. I don't recall specifically what it was about. I just remember it being about the meeting.
How did the meeting go?
I think it went pretty well. I mean, we received a lot of what we were asking for, so I think it went pretty good. We got raises for the deputies, and we got raises for we got raises for the deputies. We got a lot of new equipment and some new cars.
And you got a lot of new equipment, meaning?
Well, one thing I specifically remember was I think we bought 66 cars that year, which was unheard of. We normally kept on pace to buy about 30, which didn't put us ahead of anything. I think we ended up buying 66 cars because we were afforded a little bit more money so we could put our vehicles on that rotation, so we wouldn't have to do that in the future.
And then have to put them on rotation?
Yes.
Okay. Then everybody leaves?
From Charlotte, yes.
Right. On the way back, do you remember calling Ty?
No, I never called Ty.
Now, would you have ever said in front of Savannah what was said, or claimed that you said on that route?
Absolutely not. I would never have said that. I did not call Ty because I don't call Ty. I did not call Ty unless it was a work-related issue or something that we needed to discuss for work. Like I said earlier, Ty and I had a merely professional relationship. We didn't have a personal relationship.
After you get back to Greenville, how are things with Savannah?
Fine.
Have any problems?
No, sir.
Have any problems in the working relationship?
No, sir.
At that point?
No, sir, not at that point.
Did the incident in Charlotte ever get mentioned again?
You know, I mean, it was talked about briefly, but more in the context of, you know, more in the context of shame for me.
Well, talking about shame for you, but in April, what are you talking to her about?
In April, when we get back around and we start talking about other things, I felt like, I don't know, it was stupid. I started, you know, I pursued on audio, I mean, it's evidently clear, that I was just dumb and, you know, pursuing a relationship with a girl that was not my wife.
Did you ever create a position with Savannah neighbors for the purpose of having sexual relations with them?
Absolutely not.
What was the purpose of creating that position?
The purpose of creating that position was to make sure that I had someone there, like I said earlier, that got me where I needed to be, that was able to do a lot of the administrative details that needed to be done. Like I said, that position was lacking for so long in that agency. I mean, the agency's large. I mean, there's a lot of people that call. There's a lot of people that need things. There's a lot of people that do things. And it was really difficult for me to keep up with those things on my own.
When we go to those recordings with Savannah, she talks about how great things have been the past 2 weeks. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And have they been great for 2 weeks?
Yes, sir.
Have they been great for longer?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Do you know where, and this was, I believe, on the 18th. The first recording was on the 18th.
Okay.
Right? Prior to that, is there any indication at all that she was remotely considering leaving the position?
No, sir.
And she had any discussions with you about, I can't work with you?
No, sir.
Anything like that?
No, sir. It was actually just the opposite. Savannah's conversation leading up to that day were, you know, I kind of wish she probably would have said, you know, I can't work with you. I don't want to work with you anymore, because it probably would have prevented me from continuing to pursue. At that point, I just felt like it was, I mean, the relationship was good. We consistently talked about being friends and being able to trust each other.
So you call her up and ask her about going to Reno?
No, sir, I said that in her driveway.
Well, excuse me?
In her driveway.
In a driveway, excuse me, but it was, that's right. And did she ever say anything about what happened in Charlotte in relation to that comment?
No, sir, she never mentioned Charlotte.
And what was her initial response to the going to Reno?
If I recall, she said something to the effect of, yeah, I want to go to Reno.
Mm-hmm. And then y'all had a discussion about the room arrangements.
We did.
Right. Did she ever definitively say anything like, we go to Reno, we're not sharing a room?
She never definitively said, no, we go to Reno, we're not sharing a room.
I mean, she made comments that, at least from the word said, expressed concern about your reputation.
She did.
So, then all of a sudden after that conversation, what happened to the relationship?
It turned into it was almost like a boyfriend-girlfriend squabble, like back in high school. All of our conversations turned into that. It was just a back and forth.
Did you see any of that type of conversation coming?
No, sir. I never saw that coming.
So, you had numerous conversations with her that were reported, you've heard them all, haven't you?
Yes, sir. I heard.
She ever discussed the Charlotte incident with you?
No, sir.
Didn't bring it up at all?
She never brought up Charlotte.
So what ultimately happened, where did she go right after the 18th, which is like the day before the funeral of the officer in Spartanburg?
I'm sorry, can you ask me that again?
What did she do after the 18th, and the 18th being the day before the funeral of the officer in Spartanburg?
What did she ultimately do?
Right,
we had a conversation about, she left.
right.
She left that day.
And where'd she go?
She went to Florida.
And she does have does her sister's husband have needs?
Her sister's husband was a paraplegic, and she had been discussing with me for multiple weeks prior to that how he had been having some pretty significant problems. He had been involved in an auto accident at an early age, and it caused him some really major issues. Her sister took care, she was the primary caretaker for her husband, and she needed Savannah's help.
Did you understand that?
I understood that.
I think in some of the conversations you asked her, and she indicated she was going to quit or might quit or what?
She alluded, I believe, to it. I can't remember specifically what was said by her at that point. I was definitely of the impression that Savannah was not comfortable working there anymore. So, if she didn't want to work there, then,
You recall getting a call from Ty Miller on Saturday, the 22nd, I believe.
Ty called me on the 22nd and said that Savannah had called her and wanted to talk to her.
And did you discourage Ty in any way?
No, I believe I encouraged her.
Did you have any idea what it was about?
No.
So what happened after Ty talked to Savannah? Did she call you?
I don't remember if Ty called me back or not.
Did you subsequently see her?
The next time I remember seeing Ty was the following Monday.
Let me back up a little bit too before y'all went to Charlotte. Ty testified about a meeting in your office where she talked about you and Savannah coming to an officer shooting early one morning or late one night. Do you remember having that conversation?
I don't remember Ty talking to me about that, but it would not be uncommon if Ty thought that I was out of line with something for her to talk to me about.
What?
I very specifically remember the actual shooting of it, and I do remember what Ty was referencing. It's the first time I've heard that. The shooting was actually on Scuffletown Road. It was a good ways down Scuffletown Road, and there's no parking down there because it's on the road. The residence was actually on the road. Savannah, I had contacted her to let her know that we had an officer-involved shooting, and she came to meet me at Bell's Crossing Elementary School, which is right there on Scuffletown Road. She met me at Bell's Crossing, parked her car at Bell's Crossing, and then we drove in my car down to the shooting scene on Scuffletown Road.
Why did you think it was important for Savannah to come to crime scene cases like that?
Savannah did not have a law enforcement background. I think any civilian that works in law enforcement, if they're going to work around law enforcement officers, if they're going to work in that area or that arena, they need to have a concept or an idea of what goes on. They need to have an idea of what we do every single day. I think it was pretty important for Savannah to get to know that, especially working in the position that she was working in as the assistant to the sheriff. People were going to be asking her questions. People were going to be talking to her that sidebar conversations and things like that. She needed to be engaged. She needed to know.
And did she get called out on any others?
Savannah was, if I was called out after hours, I would normally reach out to Savannah, no matter what the call was.
And up until the 18th of April, what hours did she work?
There were no set hours. She worked I mean, she could be there at 6 in the morning until, 6 or 7 at night. It could be, a lot of times she would ask, hey, do you care if I go to the gym before I come in today? So she would go to the gym, maybe come in around 9:30 or 10, work until later on that evening. I mean, it was not uncommon for her hours to range anywhere from, it could be between 10 and 15 hours a day.
And she mentioned in her testimony that she worked to 8 and 9 o'clock at night a good bit. Would that be correct?
Yes, sir, and past that as well, especially when we were doing the live PD that some of the guys referred to earlier. That would run, I think it ran until midnight. So sometimes she would want to come in and watch how that whole thing worked.
So, you get a call from Ty, or have a conversation with Ty about her conversation with Savannah. And then Savannah comes in the following Monday.
Seems like it shortly thereafter.
And you had a long talk with them.
I did. The doors were open to the office, and she was. She said that she had decided that she didn't want to. She was going to tender her resignation for 2-week notice, and that's it. That's what I recall.
In the tape, or the video, audio that we heard, there's a comment in there about, I think it's actually another one, about, you made a comment that I've lost a friend.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Exactly what I said. I've lost a friend. Savannah and I were friends, and after the encounter, having the affair, it was obvious that I emotionally, I knew myself internally, emotionally, there's no way that I could continue down that path. I knew that at some point I was going to have to tell my wife, and I knew, that I could not continue to be with Savannah, and at that point, and even in a working relationship. So I felt like I had lost a friend, and quite frankly, my right hand, because she did so much work for me.
And did she respond that she's lost a friend too?
She referred to me quite commonly as her friend.
Did it appear to be sincere?
It did to me.
And in those audios that you got, did you ever cuss her out?
No, sir. I've got a foul mouth, but I don't remember cussing her out.
Did you ever? Do any of the conversations have increased volume, so to speak?
When she agitates me for that bickering boyfriend, girlfriend, back and forth kind of thing, juvenile. I mean, it's just a juvenile conversation. I would maybe raise my voice at some point.
Did you threaten her in any way, any of them?
Absolutely not.
If she wanted to remain in your employ, you think it could have been worked out?
I mean, knowing what I know now, looking back at the situation, there's no.
Well, let me rephrase it then. At the time she left, did you think it could be worked out?
I think I probably had hopes that it would.
Right. So Savannah leaves, and you were without a personal assistant for a while?
Short period of time, yes.
And who was responsible for hiring the replacement?
Ty Miller, Marcus Davenport, and Jackie Cooper.
Okay. You didn't have an input in it?
I mean, if I ran into someone or something along those lines and mentioned it, then, but I didn't have any input into it.
Do you ever recall mentioning?
Let me back up a little bit. Obviously, I did have some input into it, but they were the ones that were going through the selection process.
All you could do was what?
Just simply acknowledge it, and agree to it.
Do you ever recall talking about anything like a beauty queen from Tennessee?
I don't recall that.
when this thing broke, did, they seize your phone,
They did.
seize your computer,
They did.
seize your personal phone?
They did.
Were any pictures of anybody from Tennessee found on that phone?
Not to my knowledge.
And you heard of any name of anyone from Tennessee?
No, sir.
A town in Tennessee?
No, sir.
Who ultimately was hired to do this job?
Addie Hampton.
And did you know Addie before she was hired for this position?
I knew Addie in a limited capacity from her work at a local news station.
And that was it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What salary did she receive for this job?
She received $68,000 a year.
Was that more than Savannah?
Yes.
Did Addie have a little more qualification?
The added qualification that Addie had was her media relations portion, as that position required media relations public information.
Did Addie get out and go to crime scenes?
Addie did the exact same job as Savannah Neighbors.
And did she go to crime scenes?
She did.
Did she, do you know about how many?
I specifically remember, I think, 4 that she went to.
Did she have a vest?
She did.
Bulletproof vest?
She did. Actually, Major Tom Miller is the one that took her to get her fitted for that vest.
Do you know much about Addie's background?
Addie was a beauty queen from Georgia.
Mhm.
She was actually Miss Georgia.
Okay.
And then Addie went to the University of Georgia, which was her only fault that I could find. And after she graduated from Georgia, she went to work in, I believe, Florida for a little bit. She left Florida as she believed she was a journalist down there. She came up here and worked for a period of time. And that's.
And did you and Addie become friends?
Oh, yes, sir.
Did you socialize together?
We did.
I believe she actually met your general counsel.
She did. She very happy to say that they're married as of this week. She met the general counsel from the sheriff's office while at the sheriff's office, and they were married this past Friday. We were invited to the wedding.
And they're on their honeymoon now?
They are. Addie also, I think it's important to note that the relationship with Addie was one that she would interact with my children. My daughter was a high school rodeo queen.
Mm-hmm.
Addie would help her during her pageants, get set up for those kind of things, as Addie ran a side business that did that. Addie volunteered her services to help my daughter as well do those kind of things.
And how long did she stay in that position?
Until the day that I left.
And the position went on, and why did she leave the day you left? Oh.
She may have stayed for another week or two after I left, after I was indicted.
Mm-hmm.
But the position was, to my understanding, dissolved.
What's what?
Dissolved.
Dissolved, so there's no position for her. Stay with her.
Correct.
Who has vests for in law enforcement on the civilian side?
Well, as far as civilians go, there are first and foremost the chaplains, because the chaplains respond to crime scenes. Not all chaplains wear uniforms. Some of them have a vest, what we call a turtle shell, that would just have chaplain across the front of the Velcro. They would have bulletproof vests, no guns. They would, let's see, anybody who ultimately was going to be at a number of crime scenes would have been issued a vest. One of the things we did was we have a ride-along program at the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, and when you are able to, you can submit your paperwork, and it's a very limited amount of paperwork. It's just, I want to ride along, and you put on there that you're not currently under investigation or something along those lines. They run a criminal history, and then you're assigned to ride with the deputy for however long you want to ride, either a full shift or half a shift or something like that. We had gotten to the point to where we were actually giving the ride-alongs vests. Now, they were vests that had been turned back in from deputies who had either resigned or had been terminated or whatever, but those vests were then transferred to the ride-alongs, and those ride-alongs were given vests.
Did Savannah ever ask you to send her to the academy?
She did.
Was there a need for her to go to the academy?
There was no need for Savannah to go to the academy.
Did she go?
No, sir.
What about things like repelling and SWAT teams and stuff like that?
That was one of those things where I kind of encouraged people to again interact with the deputies, the civilians, to kind of get to know them. Most of the people did not want to do that. Most of the people wanted to just kind of stay in their little comfort zone, which was fine. There was no problem with that. Savannah wanted to go out. She wanted to go rappelling with the SWAT team. She wanted to go shooting with the SWAT team. She wanted to go and go to the ICAC events. She wanted to go to the takedowns and those kind of things. And we would not let her go to an actual takedown that was actually transpiring, but she was allowed to watch things either via video or from a secure location or something like that. So she got to do a lot of that. But she asked. So I mean, there were multiple text messages where she would say, "Hey, if you don't care, I'm going to go to the range this morning and shoot."
And you mentioned that she was a frequenter of the gym.
She was.
So was she, what was her concern, or what was her attitude toward staying in shape, athletic, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, she was, she stayed in the gym. I mean, it was pretty constant. I mean, she would, several days a week, she would talk about coming in, from the gym or whatever. She would get downstairs into the locker room to shower before she came upstairs. I will tell you one other thing that I remember too, about the civilians. There was a major that worked at the sheriff's office prior to me coming here that I released after I got there. His, I still have the pictures actually. His 6-year-old son, or maybe 8-year-old son, was rappelling with the SWAT team from the Greenville Drive Stadium. 6 to 8 years old, rappelling with the SWAT team.
Well, do many people who work at the Sheriff's Department that are civilians request to participate in these activities?
Not many.
And would there been any rule that prohibited them from doing it if they requested?
Absolutely not. I mean, I encouraged it. I wanted them to do it.
And why was that?
Because again, I think it's very important for a civilian employee to get to know the law enforcement officers that are out there every day and to get to know what their job is and to get to see what they do. And instead of going out and, getting shot at or, having to work at 3 o'clock in the morning and eating greasy food is, for breakfast, you can actually not have to go through the bad stuff and enjoy the good stuff, which I thought was a good perk, a good bonus for them.
Did other employees, particularly civilian employees, Sheriff's Department, occasionally get time off that wasn't technically pre-planned?
I'm sorry, ask me that again.
Did other civilian employees of the Sheriff's Department while you were there get time off that wasn't arranged ahead of time?
Absolutely.
And how would that work?
So, I mean, if it was a rough week or a busy week or something, I would let all of the admin staff, the ladies and admin go, maybe on Friday at 3 o'clock or something like that. I would let them go. I remember very specifically that there were some situations where Ms. Cooper was having some family issues and she needed to take some time off, and it wasn't scheduled, but she always felt it necessary to schedule it with me, and I told her, Jackie, just go. I trust you. I was very different. I was very lenient with my people. I mean, they knew what their job was. If they did their job and they came to work and they did their job between the hours that they were supposed to do them, or whenever, law enforcement is not a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job. If they could perform their duties within the time that they were prescribed to be there, whenever they chose to be there, as long as they gave me a full good day's work. I wasn't a slave driver. I didn't think that was necessary.
And while you were there, what was the situation concerning raises of deputies that you were initially seeking in March?
Well, unfortunately, I subscribe to the theory now that Rome wasn't built in a day. It's not something that you could do overnight. We were able to get a lot of the new incoming people and the transition people exactly where we wanted them to be, or pretty close. So during my transition, the entire transition team were afforded significant, hefty raises, like I said, up to $85,000 apiece. And I know that all of them, maybe except for one, received a raise, and they were already at a certain pay scale. The new civilian positions that we created, they were already put in place so that we would not have to give them raises, that they would be able to stay where they were. As we saw that those positions were becoming more demanding, the civilian positions, because they were new, we may have been able to give them a raise. The administrative staff upstairs, and I think that Ms. Cooper testified to this, but what she didn't testify to was that she was not the only one that received a raise upstairs. The entire administrative staff upstairs, all of the ladies that worked in the admin coordinator position or the assistant position, all of those ladies received a salary raise. And it brought them up to pretty much level. Everybody was pretty equal at that point.
Did you ultimately get a county credit card?
I did.
And do you know what the procedure is for charging things to it?
So when I would use my county credit card for something, I would actually process the card, take a receipt, and I would write on my receipts, who was present during a meeting, if I was buying a lunch meeting or something like that, who was present, what it was for, the conversations that took place, pretty detailed. And then I would submit that to Linda Cobb, who would process it and then approve it. And then once it was approved, she would send it to the county finance department.
Did you ever have any rejected?
Never had anything rejected.
Is there a county policy that you know of about alcohol being charged on a county card?
I don't know if it's a county policy, but I subscribe to the theory that we wouldn't put alcohol on credit cards.
Did it get on your room bill?
I believe, yeah, I found out it was on my room bill.
Anybody ever write you and say you need to reimburse us for that?
Nobody ever wrote me. I didn't find out until maybe at the beginning of this week or maybe 2 weeks ago, sometime in the last probably week or so, that alcohol was charged in my room.
Did you occasionally spend your personal money on the sheriff's business?
I would call it occasionally. I think I spent $5,000 plus in the first couple of months of my own personal money on things that I was just not sure that.
When the blog came out, created controversy, needless to say.
Yes, sir, it did.
Did the county conduct any audits on your office?
They did. There was a county councilman that immediately stood up and, said if he's cheating on his wife, he must be stealing money from the sheriff's office. So he called for an audit, and once he called for the audit,
I object to the testimony regarding the audit. If they want to call someone and talk about an audit, they can. Sheriff doesn't have any money.
That's irrelevant.
Well, I think it's relevant because they've accused of misconduct in the office, and if nothing happened, audit shows nothing. I think it's relevant to that issue.
All right, go ahead.
The audit was conducted. Once the audit was conducted, I received a letter from county council or from the county administrator's office that said the audit had been completed and that there were no findings of any fault, of any misuse of money. That was that audit was conducted on the foundation, on the sheriff's foundation, on the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, and I believe on the narcotics funds that we had as well, that the county had access to. And it was actually found that due to the foundation, that the county government, I believe, owed us a certain amount of money back that they had never paid us for passive alcohol sensors that we were using on the road.
Any report ever given to you that you have improperly spent a dime of county money?
Never.
Now, there was some testimony today about, I forgot Drew's last name,
Pinkara,
Carroll. Did he ever write speeches for you?
Drew Pinkara never wrote a speech for me.
What was his function in your scheme of things?
Drew's position was, he was an extra public information officer when I got there. My predecessor, Mr. Loftus, had a couple of PIOs. Drew would occasionally put a bullet point statement together for me. Never wrote speeches. I don't have speeches. I never had speeches written for me. I always spoke from the cuff. I remember at one point somebody tried to write a speech for me, and it didn't go very well. So I didn't do speeches. I would just kind of speak off the cuff. Drew's position was necessary under my predecessor, but when Drew left the sheriff's office, we did not fill Drew's position.
And he left when?
I don't recall exactly. It was within a couple of months.
Did you ever intentionally, inadvertently, or even accidentally spend any inappropriate money on Savannah neighbors?
No.
What did that incident do to you?
It gave me an opportunity to reflect on a lot of things. One of which, and the most important, was my relationship with God. Secondly, and probably the 1A, was my family and my wife. It took a lot for me to come to grips with what I had done. It took a lot for me to come to grips with the fact that I had cheated on my wife. Somebody got up on the stand, and although I wasn't expecting it, John Hansley called me arrogant and conceited and braggadocious. And at the time that I knew John, I could probably see that. I could see how that would be me. Humility. Don't get me wrong. I'm far from perfect, but man, I'm sure trying to be a better person. I'm trying to be a better husband.
How did you run the day-to-day operations of the sheriff's department?
After I left, after this happened?
Before and after this happened? Up until the blog in August?
Well, I believe we ran it really well, and I cannot take full credit for that. Savannah kept me on track in a lot of areas from the beginning. The leadership team was right there with us. We continued to move forward. We continued to make huge strides. There was a point, I specifically remember somebody from, I believe it was WSBA, that called for some numbers that we had done. And we had lowered our response times to crimes. And that's a significant thing. We had put more deputies on the road. We had put more deputies out there for the community to see and reduce crime. I remember specifically numbers that were told to me, and I don't remember the exact number, but I think in some areas of the county we had dropped crime almost 30%. In other areas we had dropped it 19%. In other areas we had dropped it 10%. It was a significant drop across the board. The response times were down. And I'm going to tell you one thing that I'm most proud of that we did. was, we were able to, from January of 2017 until April, when I was indicted, we had, I believe we had 0 murders in Greenville County. And that was the implementation of what the men and women were doing. It had nothing to do with, me specifically. It had everything to do with the team as a whole. We may have had, thinking about that, we may have had one murder like December 31st to January 1st. Maybe that was a murder that night, but from the entire full month of January all the way through April, I don't remember any murders. And that was a testament to how the men and women were doing. This was after the blog came out. This was after the blog came out. These men and women, although they had to face down the barrel of all of my indiscretions, and people asking them questions every day, there's no doubt about it. They got asked questions about it. They still did their job, and they did it really, really well. And I'll always be proud of those guys. Always.
How hard was it to make the decision to do the press conference we saw earlier?
It was, I remember being numb. I remember being, at that point, Amy knew, my wife knew. We had talked about it. I told her that I did not want her in that room with me when I gave that press conference, because I was not going to be the guy who was holding, have his wife standing next to him while he was trying to explain an affair. That wasn't fair to her, and I didn't like the idea. She offered to come, I declined, but it was very difficult, very difficult.
Aside from the affair with Savannah Neighbors, did you fulfill your duties as sheriff of Greenville County?
Absolutely, I did, every day.
Thank you. Answer any questions, Mr. Pratt?
Yes, sir. All right. I thought you were at the top of the restroom break before this one. That's all I want to see. Yeah, I'll be good. Yes, sir. Super.
We can take a short break. That's fine.
Jerry, one right?
Right on the edge of the seat. Right on the edge.
Mr. Lewis, you were telling us what the salary range was for administrative assistant. Tell us what that salary range is again.
No, sir, I was telling you the salary range was for administrative coordinator.
Okay, well, administrative coordinator, tell us what the salary range is for an administrative coordinator.
I don't, like I said, I don't know specifically, but if I recall correctly, it was probably somewhere between 58 and 70, maybe 72.
However, you heard the testimony that, for instance, Jackie Cooper, an administrative coordinator, correct? She was paid less than 58, so that can't be the salary range, can it?
I believe Ms. Cooper was an administrative assistant before she was an administrative coordinator.
But she was administrative coordinator when you came into office.
I don't know if she was or not. I heard her describe herself as an administrative assistant.
And in fact, the administrative coordinator position starts much farther down, somewhere around 30,000 or less, and only goes up to about 64 to 65,000. Isn't that true?
I have no idea. The salary range I gave you for administrative coordinator is the one that was explained to me.
And so when you started off Savannah Neighbors at $62,000, she was near the cap of what an administrative coordinator can make.
If your numbers are correct, but I don't know that they are.
We got a lot to cover here. Let's start with a couple things. Let's start with Joe Purnell. Now, you said you had started at County Square first, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Cannell actually set you up with a spot there for you to work, and also a spot, you shared that spot with Savannah Neighbors at that time, right?
He offered me an office, yes, sir.
Right, and so you worked in an office in County Square.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you would meet with Joe Cornell regularly to talk to him about things, which,
Not that I recall, no, sir.
but he's right there with you in County Square, right?
I wouldn't say right there with me. I think it was testified earlier. County Square's pretty big.
It is big, but it's the same building.
Yes, sir.
One complex.
Yes, sir.
So you can just walk over to Joe Cornell's office anytime you'd like to talk.
No, sir. That was not correct at all.
And as a matter of fact, you had a decent friendship that was grown up between you and Joe Cornell.
I don't think so. I mean, we were
As you were
acquaintances.
getting into office, correct?
No, sir. As we were acquaintances, I wouldn't say we had friendship.
You didn't work with him in much in any way, trying, as you were making the transition?
Maybe small conversations here and there.
And as a matter of fact, you had ultimately become such friends that by March, you took him to the BMW Performance School, driving school, right?
No, sir. Mark Davenport's the one that set that up.
For you, at your request, correct?
No, sir.
So Marcus just said, Sheriff, I'm inviting you to come to BMW driving school.
And actually, what Marcus testified to was they were his connections that he used over there. He used his contacts.
Right, but Marcus doesn't just do things on his own, he's under your command. He did things for you,
No, sir. Marcus did things for himself, just like he did for everybody else.
but he did not invite Savannah to that, did he?
I don't recall, but
You
I
invited
did.
Savannah.
I did. Yes, sir.
And in fact, I believe your attorney talked about with Joe Cornell, one of the good things about going to Charlotte was you could kind of get aside with him and talk to him, and that would have benefited you, correct?
It absolutely benefited the two, the sheriff and the administrative coordinator, or the administrative, Joe Cornell's position to
Right.
be friends.
In the BMW driving school, that takes pretty much all day, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
And when you took Joe Cornell to the BMW driving school, you didn't drive with Joe Cornell, did you?
I did not take Joe Cornell.
You were not paired with him, though. You all were there together, taking the classes together, right?
Correct.
You paired yourself with Savannah, didn't you?
Yes, sir. We were paired together.
All right. And you decided to pair yourselves together,
We decided to pair ourselves together. Yes, sir.
right? When you could have paired yourself with Joe Cornell, maybe built that relationship even more. But you decided not to do that, didn't you?
I didn't decide not to do it. No, sir.
But you decided to pair with Savannah.
Savannah and I decided to pair together. Yes, sir.
What is the next number? Lewis, I'm going to have you look at State's Exhibit number 20.
Yes, sir.
This is a set of text messages, I believe, from your phone.
Okay.
And if you will look, just so I can orient you, it starts from the bottom and goes up, it doesn't go down when you read, the time goes up.
Okay.
So there's one listed in 1499 as far as the number of texts. I'd ask you to look at that one first, and tell me what that says, what that indicates. Down towards the bottom.
And you want me to read up from there?
Right, that text, and then the next text is actually not a response to that. The text that's a response to that is like one or two steps up. Maybe I can, a couple of.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
I'm looking at it. From here to here?
Right here, and then it'll be there. I believe this is, it says Cornell Joe. It's an incoming call or an incoming text.
Okay. An incoming text to Joe Cornell. Congratulations.
From Joe Cornell to your phone. This is your phone.
Okay, this is to my phone. Congratulations again, Will. I look forward to you taking law enforcement to a whole new level in the coming years, and I look forward to working with you to make Graham County a better place. Shortly thereafter, I got a message from someone else. Should we read those as well?
No, just the ones,
Okay.
your message back to him.
My message back to Mr. Cornell was, so thankful for you and what you've done for me in the past few months, and thankful for the newfound friendship. And like you, think we can do great things in this county. Thank you so very much.
All right, and the date on those?
1-2 and 1-2.
Okay, so January 2nd, that's of 2017, right?
Correct.
So actually, the day before, you were actually officially sworn in as sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so that's confirming, you're confirming in this text that you've worked with him for several months.
Confirming in that text that I had been employed by the county for 3 months between October, November, and December. And
So-
that's what that's about.
Right, and you're saying, and I'm so thankful for you and what you've done for me in the past few months.
Yeah, absolutely. He gave me a job because Steve Loftus wouldn't let me transition the agency.
In the past few months, so
December.
you would just testify though that you really didn't have any friendship with him. This confirms you did have a friendship with him going over the past few months and had worked with him already a fair amount.
No, sir.
That's not what that indicates.
No, sir.
On January 2nd,
No, sir.
that's the place it's in evidence, please.
No objection. Madam Chair.
Now, being familiar with how large County Square is, I think you just told us it was very large. You could have done your meeting that you ultimately did in Charlotte in County Square, couldn't you? There's plenty of places to meet in there.
We could have.
And it wouldn't cost the county anything,
Tom, that would have been it.
right? Well, and time is what the job is, right? You work and take time.
Yes, sir.
And you could have ordered in lunch.
We could have.
You could have turned off your cell phones.
We could have.
And you could have just set that aside and it wouldn't have been a problem.
We could have.
Now, one of the things, if you could tell me kind of the duties that Savannah had. What were her duties that you required of her to do? Spell those out for us.
Savannah's job description, like I said earlier, was to keep track of emails, was to keep track of scheduling events, text messages. She would answer my cell phone if we were out. If we were out doing things, she would answer my cell phone. If I was out on call or something like that, she would answer those. She would take dictation and notes in every meeting, oftentimes confidential meetings that would take place. Savannah would take notes at command staff. If we were out somewhere and Savannah was with me, I would say, I need for you to remind me to do this. As she would walk with me down the hallways, if something happened or someone ran into us and I found out that someone was sick or that someone was hurt, someone's wife was, injured or something, I would get Savannah to remind me to send them a letter or a note. We would continue, again, out and about. If we were at a crime scene, she would normally stage or help stage the media. She would do, when it was time for me to do certain things at a crime scene, if I needed to give statements or anything like that, Savannah would pull me off to the side. If there was something specific that went wrong at the crime scene, if we saw the way things could be done better, she would annotate how those things could be done better, bring them up again at the next command staff. She would basically take all of my notes for the next command staffs. We didn't have weekly command staffs, we had bi-weekly command staffs. So I would have 2 weeks of notes put together before we went, those kind of things.
So your public information officers would be the ones staging the media for you at crime scenes?
The public information officers would do that, yes. They had that job prior to me being there, and they did continue to do that while I was there.
And she had no training doing that, for doing that, did she?
It doesn't take any training to tell the cameras where they need to be.
She has no training for crime scenes, does she?
She had never been on a crime scene to my knowledge before.
She had no training for any law enforcement activity.
Civilian employees don't have training for law enforcement.
But you're telling us you relied on her for law enforcement type of work.
I relied on Savannah as my administrative assistant, as the person who could help me to get my job done on a daily basis. I did not rely on Savannah to answer calls. I did not rely on Savannah to do things that were of a quote, law enforcement nature. She would be responsible for assisting me in my law enforcement capacity.
Wouldn't staging the media at a crime scene,